Hi everyone, welcome back to my little corner of the internet. So, our first Bridgerton spin-off has landed, but is it the diamond of the season? Let's talk. First things first, I love Bridgerton. Both season 1 and 2 were amazing, and although I think that overall season 1 is stronger, season 2 was also really good. I love how colorful and whimsical and the designs are, how in between worlds it feels, and I love the intense chemistry of the protagonist. So needless to say, I was very excited about Queen Charlotte, also because she's a fun, sassy queen with a really sad story, and we kind of only see little nuggets of it in the regular Bridgerton seasons. So I was very curious to see it play out. I watched it immediately as it came out, and I was really surprised to see that it was only 6 episodes long. Sure, I mean, the last episode is extra long, but still like a pretty short season considering that the regular Bridgerton seasons are 8 episodes long. So I was wondering why they did that, but whatever. I watched it all in one sitting though, which was a very easy binge watch. I really enjoyed it. It has a lot of good things in it that were really entertaining to watch, but it's not perfect. So let's talk about everything. I loved the silent opening. I love a good show don't tell moment, even though I'm bad at it, but I love it. And Charlotte being literally signed away without her even being in the room was very powerful. India Amartefio, who plays Queen Charlotte, has incredible micro expressions that are still able to come through in these scenes, like the anger and defiance on her face when she gets in the carriage. Magnificent. The whole first episode, I think, is really great. You got so much to take in. Bridgerton's London is very mixed race, but here it's the beginning of that mixing. And so there are some political issues at hand as well, which brings me to something I noticed, and I don't know if it's good or bad, but it is interesting. It's interesting how hard they try to avoid the word black in Bridgerton. Most of the time, especially like in the regular seasons, they say things like people who look like us, or they don't look like us. Even here in Queen Charlotte, they start with those phrasings, but then we do get the Queen Mother saying like she's brown. And I think the choice of brown versus black is also really interesting. I'm not the person to write a whole essay about this, but I did find it very peculiar. So on the one hand, the issue of race is a lot more prevalent in this show than on the regular Bridgerton. The whole issue of titles and having them actually completely apply and be passed on, the racism of the ton, the scene where Charlotte gets her likeness painted and the Queen Mother insists on making her white, and yet it's very clearly played as not the same as in the real world. Add to that the actors who were chosen to portray Charlotte's children, and it's just the most confusing thing in the world. At that point, I'm just sitting here thinking, are we acknowledging race in this show or not? Because it's all tossed up. I'm gonna be honest with you, the first time I watched season 1 of Bridgerton, up until the point where like Lady Dansbury mentions the people who look like us, I just thought we were gonna do this as if like the show wasn't gonna acknowledge race, and like either way is fine, just pick a lane. That's what I'm trying to get to. If you know a YouTuber that does deep dives into race in Bridgerton, please link it below. I would love to watch that. But moving on. I love how this show looks and the fact that they insist on having wisterias everywhere at all times. They make it look as if those flowers bloom year round and not like 2 weeks or 3 weeks out of the year. Great. They also kept like with the classical renditions of the pop songs, which is always fun. That was a really big surprise in the first season of Bridgerton, so I'm really happy that they are keeping up with it here as well. Whoever is in charge of the chemistry checks for Bridgerton should get a raise. They just don't fail. The chemistry between Charlotte and George was so electric. It was really beautiful, even though the relationship is extremely rocky, unhealthy, intense, all of the above. I think that their story was really nice and interesting to see, but the one thing I'm really not sold on for this show were the flash forward scenes. They felt very unnecessary and disconnected to me. I really disliked the whole plotline of Charlotte hounding her children for heirs. It didn't really feel connected to me, and all of her children are awful, which then puts her in a bad light. Also, a lot of future Charlotte didn't feel connected to young Charlotte. A lot did, but some things really didn't. I think they managed to portray her power and confidence really well, but her extreme vanity did not exist in young Charlotte, and I don't see how it would evolve that way. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Another one was her whole relationship with love. There's a scene where she sits with Violet and Agatha and asks them for advice on how to convince her children to marry. Violet says it helps if they're in love, and the face Charlotte makes is as if she doesn't know what that means or what that feels like, but then the whole story of the show is how she is very much in love with George. I think that scene is slightly redeemed though when she talks to her son on his forced wedding day about how you just need to decide to love someone and commit to it. So while this this particular bit was a little jarring for me while viewing the show. Looking back on it, it's not as much of a misalignment as the vanity thing. Still a bit jarring though. In addition to that, we have the whole Lady Danbury plot that was wholly unneeded. I did not need to know that Lady Danbury had an affair with Violet's father. I mean, what did that accomplish? It felt completely shoved in there and just odd. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm very happy that she was in the story, and Arsema Thomas, who played young Lady Danbury, is stunning, but I really didn't need those side quests. We could have seen her friendship with Violet and Violet's garden blooming issues in season 3 of Bridgerton. I think here it just felt very tacked on and just completely unrelated. I would have preferred to see more of young Lady Danbury securing the inheritance of her title and it being passed down to her son, or seeing how she was able to regain her wealth, because they mentioned that she lost everything basically, and yet in current Bridgerton times she's very wealthy, so something happened and we didn't get it. Or you know what else would have been really nice to see? Her friendship with the Duke's mother, right? Since it's such an important part of season 1, it would have been very interesting to see it more in depth. So those would have been better plots than her weird affair with Violet's father. Her courtship with the Queen's brother can stay, because in a way it's an important plot point. But yeah, I googled King George III, and it seems like they stuck pretty faithfully to the broad strokes of his and Queen Charlotte's lives. I find that interesting, although apparently in real life, Queen Charlotte was terrified of King George once his illness showed up and refused to be alone in a room with him, so that's kind of sad. Now, speaking of King George, let's talk about him for a bit. I think Corey Malcrist, who plays George, did a phenomenal job. In fact, all the actors did. I don't think there was anyone that was bad, but especially Corey. He brought a lot of heart and pain into the role. You could really feel his struggles, and it was beautiful and painful to watch. I do think the whole plotline with the doctor could have been done a bit better. I was left confused as to the doctor's motives. He started with, I don't use terrible methods with my patients, I just talk to them. But then does a complete 180 and moves into actual torture. And I know that the king is the one that asked him to use untested methods, but it just didn't line up with what the doctor said before, which is why I felt like he was up to something. I mean, was his plan to destroy the monarchy, exacerbate the king's illness and break it down completely? I'm left with questions. I like the little gay storyline we got with Brimsley and Reynolds. That was very cute and sweet, but again, I am left with questions because of the flash forward scenes. We see that Brimsley is alone, so then what happened to Reynolds? Did he die? Do they not see each other because Reynolds is tending to the king? But then if that were the case, we would have seen them reunite when Charlotte went to see George in the end. Questions. Another thing I'm a little torn about is episode 4. In that episode, we basically get to revisit all of the events that we have witnessed so far, but this time we see them from George's perspective. On the one hand, I thought it was really clever and important for us to see his side, but on the other hand, it felt a bit too much like we were retreading known ground and a bit of a waste of time considering there are only 6 episodes. I wonder if there could have been a more efficient or more unique way to get that point across. If, for example, there were more original scenes, maybe it wouldn't have felt like a previously on episode or an anime filler episode. I think it's really good that we got to see his point of view because it really humanizes him and makes him a much more sympathetic character, but it did feel like I was watching a rerun. Finally, I think the way the show or season ended was really good. I loved that final scene of Charlotte and George under the bed. It was really sweet and really showcased their love. Overall, I am very glad this show exists and I'm glad I watched it. I would definitely recommend it to any person who enjoyed Bridgerton. I also think it's a good introductory show for those who have been on the fence about Bridgerton, especially regarding sexually explicit content. It might fall right in the middle between the borderline pornographic first season and the almost PG-13 second season. I wonder which way season 3 will lean. It'll be interesting. I would love to hear all your thoughts about the show too. What did you like? What did you dislike? What are some things you agree on with me? And what are some things you disagree with? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, I would appreciate it if you could click that like button, and while you're there, just gently press that subscribe button to see more of my face on a regular basis. Check out some more videos over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!